I'm a Gemini, so that probably tells you way more than you need to know. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh dear. So half the audience has already discredited you right now.
Yeah.
Then they gotta discredit me because I'm a Gemini too. Gemini power, air high five.
Yeah, I'm not gonna air high five that.
I'm glad that's what you
He
used
did
power
air
to.
high five. He's pretending to be cool by not air high fiving me, but he actually did.
So welcome to the first episode of Nat 20 Knowledge, brought to you by most of the Dicey D20 crew. I'm Josh, your host, and we've got the master himself, the Dungeon Queen.
The Dungeon Queen. Fucking call me that.
The Dicey D20 master, Noah.
Well, thank you very much, Josh. Yeah, good to be here. Yeah.
I have to introduce everyone else, okay?
No, sorry. I just wanted to do a little intro. I just want to say Happy New Year. Okay, no, sorry.
All right, so you're gonna be the Sab. All right. And coming up to my right here, we got the back alley dungeon master, the one who makes his own rules and doesn't even follow them. So
also known as Baxter from the Dicey D20
yes,
podcast.
also plays Fievel from the Dicey D20.
Baxter.
Justin.
I love that intro. I actually love the back alley dungeon master. That's so fucking apt for you. And I am the queen, so yeah. These are good so far. Did you write this beforehand?
I did not.
Off the top, I love it.
It says back alley dungeon master, and then he has an arrow pointing to where I'm sitting. Like, he planned this out.
Moving on to our fourth and final host.
The back alley sub dungeon master.
Okay. No, that was bad. A new face to the podcast.
New face to the audio podcast.
New voice to the audio podcast. Sab's replacement. Sab could not make it. His salary was getting way too ridiculous for this podcast, so we had to bring in cheaper help. But the creator of the Fievel shirt, actually, and editor of this podcast, so I better be careful what I say about him, because he'll make me sound like shit. Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, hello. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Did you work on that all day?
Yeah, it's written on my hand.
So, Nat 20 Knowledge, it's going to be, we got professional dungeon masters, we got amateur dungeon master, and we got me, guy who knows nothing about anything, really. I don't know.
Well, about DMing. You're pretty knowledgeable about some things.
Thanks, man. I needed that today.
Yeah, I'm here for you.
So this is going to be a podcast where we kind of give tips and tricks to future dungeon masters, people just interested in the craft, deal out our knowledge. I'm going to ask questions, dig deep, hopefully ask the questions that the listeners have.
I just want you guys to know it's our way or the highway, so if you don't like what's going to be told on here, well, good luck being a DM.
Yeah, no, I firmly disagree with that. You can do whatever the fuck you want.
So this is the first episode will probably premiere on the Dicey D20 podcast, but it'll probably grow into its own separate podcast just to keep them organized. Sab gets jealous and he's not on the episodes, so
yeah. Well, we gotta watch out. He's a Cancer, man. Emotional,
physical. Anyway,
I just don't want you guys to be fooled.
Our first episode, we're going to be looking into the building of worlds, world building.
Some would say.
Some would say.
Yeah.
So we're going to look into how DMs craft a world, how you should start, what you put in the worlds, and we're going to go from there. First off, do you guys want to just do a quick overview, describe what world building is,
What world building is?
Yeah.
I'll start off the top here. World building is, look, you want to start playing D&D, like me, if you want to start playing D&D and your friends, back home, or your friends that you want to play with don't play, then it kind of you by default become the DM, because no one else is going to take up that responsibility. Everyone wants to have fun and play.
Sorry, first question. What if you don't have friends?
Then you're fucking shit out of luck, aren't you?
No.
You could impersonate to be someone else on the internet. Question answered.
Please don't do
Next.
that.
Well, no, I mean that. Okay, I shouldn't say that. You're not shit out of luck. I was just talking to a good friend of mine, He was listening to the pod and he said, I really want to play D&D, but I'm at school where like none of my friends from back home are. I'm going to be here for like 8 months of the year. He's at uni, right? And he just went to a local dice shop, local game store, and they run every like Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it is. They run intro to D&D for like beginners. So you show up, they help you make a character, you start playing, and you get the feel for it. And he said he loved it. It was super fun. He was texting me, calling me before. He was like, dude, what do I need to know about this? I was like, I don't have time to explain it all to you. Just go in with an open mind.
Don't smoke anything they give you. There's also sites like Roll20. You can find games on there, I think.
Yeah.
Hit and miss, right? But
yeah.
Cool. I don't know if you described world building. We got off onto a tangent.
No, but world building is kind of, I would categorize it as the first step. I mean, for the first step of actual D&D. I mean, once you got your friends together, once you know everyone wants to play, that's when I start world building. I start that first, kind of before I do anything else. And it's just the process by which you create the environment and the context for the crazy adventures that you're going to have with your friends. And world building can be, I know it can be intimidating for a lot of people. I think that's why we kind of thought world building was a good place to start, not only because it's the first thing that you do, but it's also because a lot of DMs, you start out, have a hard time. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. How do I fit it all into a world? So, I mean, it comes down to towns, geography, the people that inhabit them, right? So it's all that kind of stuff.
So where do you usually start building? Like just a general overview of what the world's going to look like? Do you narrow in on a certain town and then build it from there? What's your process?
So in the backstreet DM style type thing, I like to, you start in your alley and then you get to figure out the city. You start mugging people in that alley, make sure that they know that is your territory, and then you expand after that.
All right.
So I'm going to translate that just in case the listeners didn't actually understand what that meant.
I don't think you understood.
I don't think anyone understood what that meant.
Oops. Alrighty. Let's restart here. No, what I like to do is, first off, I create the whole world. So I don't say like I don't create every single town in the whole world, but I just mean you paint your big picture. So you're like, okay, there's 4 massive continents and you name them. And then eventually you're going to pick out okay, my group's going to start off here. And then you could just plan in that one continent for now. Because if you're playing for the whole thing, you're looking at hours and hours of planning, especially if you're making characters in certain towns, and you got to make sigils for knights that roam the lands or villains that are in those lands. It's really endless, and it's kind of limited to your creativity and your imagination. So if you have a big one like mine or Noah's, you're honestly going to be spending hours just on a single town. So it's kind of hard to explain in a sense because everyone's different. But in my way, so just draw out your big map, pick a continent or at least a region, and then just plan for that region, and then plan missions, make characters, that sort of thing. And then once your group is past the point of expanding past that region, then plan for that stuff. Don't overwhelm yourself right away.
But what if I want to?
I mean, have
it's
fun.
His way or the highway. You listen to that in his intro.
I introduced him as a guy who makes the rules and breaks the rules. Is that how you do it? No, do you also start big, or do you focus in a region?
I'm fucking exactly the opposite, and I'm not joking. That's serious. Whenever I start a world, I mean, I was very much. Look, I started D&D because I played with a bunch of guys on a field school, and then when I came back, I didn't have anyone to play with. So what I did was I read through the player's handbook, I read through the monster manual, and I read through the DM's guide. And then I just went online and looked for stuff. But the DM's guide is a really good resource. Use it, even if you're doing homebrews, because it basically goes through how to world build, and for me that was the best strategy, was just to start small, right? It's good to have your players in mind, so if you can have them created first, that's great. Sometimes it's not always the case, but I like to start with a small town, right? So for example, I was running this and still am running this campaign with these level 17, 18, 19. We got a 20 druid
almost
or something
capped
like that. but we but we started out. They started out as level 1s, right? They started out with nothing, and so we built this small village. That's how I started things out, and it was called Rustmore. And Rustmore is like this small fishing village. It's right on the coast. I kind of painted the geography as like this iron shore with kind of like a temperate climate, large redwood trees. It's a very small village, maybe like 20, 30 people. Guys go out every day and go fishing. The women stay home, blah, blah, blah. There's only one real bar. And then you can start painting characters into that. And then a campaign doesn't usually take place from like a small place like Rustmore, though that is where they start. They then move northwards, and they ended up in a very much larger city, which is controlled by Duke, what was his name? Darius something or other. Without my notes, I'm fucking useless. But
we know.
But so I start small. I mean, like, start with the kind of town you want. Is it a tribal nomadic town that moves around from region to region? What region is it? Is it Arctic, swamp, desert, forest, coastal? I'm a sucker for the coastal. I think that those have some of the coolest encounters. And then you kind of got to get into not just the geography, but what's the weather like? If you're if you're a DM worth your salt, you paint the picture, right? So it's like, the sun is shining and the birds are chirping. That sounds pretty generic, but when you describe the weather, your players can, like, it sounds so fucking weird, but they can smell it, they can feel it, they can picture it, and everyone pictures it differently, but you're all on the same page as far as, like, it's raining, the clouds are overhead, and in the distance, the clouds are much darker, right? Like, everyone's got an image of that. Yeah,
it helps you get into the scene for sure. So you start off basically as small as you can, as opposed to Justin's strategy, where, he's similar, he just builds the world out, like, with a framework and then circles in. So it's almost similar. Now, do you guys find that allows you to put more detail into the area? And then when you go to expand, you can focus on those areas more because you already have that small area.
Yeah, I find it gives me a lot of ability to give a lot of context, right? So, like, if you start small, you're able to kind of build relationships and networks between towns, villages, different people, right? So, like, for example, this small coastal fishing village at Rustmore, it actually provided fish for the larger city, which was somewhat inland, right?
Oh, okay.
So, and then, when they start talking to the NPCs, one of the NPCs has a cousin that went to the big city, but she hasn't heard from her since, so she's worried, right? So when they get there, that's not their main quest line, but it is, like, kind of like an investigation, something that they can kind of, like, look into if they want. If you start small, you're never going to be at risk of having an area without context. I think that's the big point. If you start big, I find it's too easy to leave large blanks of map uncharted.
Now, have you ever had it, say you've crafted all these quests and all these characters for them to interact with, and then they're just like, fuck it, we're going straight this way. And then you're just like, I didn't plan for this.
The very first time I was DMing, man, it was the very first group I DM'd, which is you guys.
Yeah.
That was a huge learning experience for me. Since then, no, I love planning. I'm a planning dude. I like to plan things out. And that being said, even if you don't plan everything out, the ability to improvise, the ability to think on your feet and react quickly to players' decisions is really helpful, because then, even if you don't have, the road mapped out between two cities for whatever reason, whether you're just lazy or you forgot or whatever the case may be.
Both.
It's not that hard for you to fill that in, right? With words. And then as you go, you're making it into law, right? So, if you don't know what the road's like, but you say, it's wide enough for a cart and a half with dirt, and there's some stones on the side, and, you hear rustling in the bushes and the trees are swaying in the wind, like, your players don't know that that's not scripted.
Yeah.
And then from then on, that's just what the road is, right? So improvisation can definitely.
So jot that down quick. Well, when they're not looking.
that's you'll see me furiously typing sometimes, and that's because whether it was
obviously all the time. Like, it's almost like you never have anything planned. You just.
I hate planning. I said to Josh before this started, because I was like, I'm not the DM on this one, so I'm not in charge. And Josh was like, do you want? Yeah, so let's go over what we're going to be talking about. I was like, no, hit me from the top. I want to fucking go in raw dog style.
And it's been downhill ever since. So. Shane is a new DM coming into the craft of DMing. I don't know. That's not eloquently put, but it gets the point across. So, because you've only been like, what, 3 months into this? About that?
DMing?
Yeah.
About 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've been playing maybe a year or so.
Get off this podcast. We were looking for a noob and this is too long. What's been your experience with building a world?
Coming into it, I thought I was pretty prepared. In mind, I did not really plan for any gods. I didn't really figure out
The weather.
Something like that.
Damn it. That's planning 101.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Justin plans the weather first, and then he plans the land around it. He plans billions of years of weather and then crafts the rocks that were formed from that.
I kind of started with how I wanted the economy to work. In my world that the characters start in, this is a world that has no monsters or creatures or anything that's really a threat.
Okay.
So I tried to figure out what people living in this world would focus on. And they're really into knowledge, arts, and basically general improvement of life and stuff like that.
So you built out kind of the ideology of the land then before you fleshed out like the actual land itself.
Yeah.
No, I think that's super fucking smart. Like,
Okay.
I like that approach a lot. I think that it's something that not a lot of DMs can do because a lot of us are stuck in the medieval Tolkien-esque fantasy of D&D, and not a lot of people are ready to branch out and think too deeply on, like, fuck, what if you're in a dictatorship? You know what I mean? Like, that can be, like, that's a thing. I've had campaigns in dictatorships, right? It completely changes the way that the game works. I've had campaigns where, like, you know, a city is controlled by, like, a banking clan. You know what I mean? Like, they own all the property. Everyone pays rent to these guys. They also own the bank, right? So, like...
Which would change the quests and the structures of the houses that are there, because they'd be probably poor houses if you're in a dictatorship. Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, you know, the geography for me always comes first, but that's just who I am, right? So I gotta have a plot of land to put my city on. But when you start thinking about the city, and this is a really good segue for that, I mean, Shane's absolutely right. Like, if you don't think about the economy, the political landscape, if you don't think about the tensions in the city, you know, like maybe think about Skyrim, Whiterun, right? No, not Whiterun. What's the northern one with the Nords? A bunch of dark elves come in, and all the Nords are like, fuck these dark elves.
Oh, Windhelm.
Yeah, Windhelm, right? And so, like, you know, there can be racial tensions, right? There can be wartime tensions, but there can also be tensions just based on, you know, just pretty nonsensical shit. If you have to think of context in the way that, you know, life is context, right? D&D is the attempt to role play, but you can't role play if you've only got one aspect of what real life is like, right? So you kind of have to manipulate the world so that there's more to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Not on what Shane said in particular, but just to run back to like the whole weather thing.
Fuck, we're gonna
he's been out of it for 10 minutes now.
No, it's a really good point, because if you think of like our planet Earth, like you travel to places and there's different types of like seasons and stuff like that. So it's really cool to add that element to the D&D as well, but it doesn't have to be in the sense of seasons. It could be biomes. So I remember the first time like Noah ran us through a session, we were like in a normal city and all that stuff, and it was like a forested area. And then as we went on, we eventually went into like a sand biome. And then there's like giant scorpions crawling underground, wasps in the ground, just like really cool stuff like that. So whenever you switch biomes, there's like a whole new list for creatures that you can make and things that you can find in the sand and different allies out there. And like we were mentioning about the economy, like it is harder to live out in like a sand biome than it would be in a forested biome. So you kind of have to integrate that stuff as well.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
To a certain extent, the landscape shapes the people and shapes the ideology, right? I mean, if you're talking about like a civilization, at least in the medieval sense or in the Tolkien sense, that lives in like a desert biome, you're kind of talking about a nomadic people, or maybe you know, not to be stereotypical, right? I'm not a dick, but like, you know, tribal people. And then, you know, if you're talking about kind of like mountainous regions that are pretty forested, you know, that's a great spot for like a barbarian clan. But that's the thing, is that, you know, you can put these different kinds of people wherever you want. Just allow for the landscape to alter them, right?
Yeah.
How do they, you know, camouflage their face when they're going on a hunt? Or how do they go and get water, right? Like all these things adds so much context, and it really depends on the landscape that you're in. And let your players explore them, because there's so many.
Yeah. I guess that's the tough thing as a DM, right? That's probably why I could personally never do it.
Don't sell yourself short.
I'm just saying, like, I'd get annoyed of it. But you build this whole world and these like amazing details, like the economy. Fucking Tyson McKay would never look into the goddamn economy of a world, like, but you've built it out there, and it's just a cool, like, not an Easter egg because it's actually part of the world, but it is kind of like an Easter egg for the players to find, and then to be surprised when you have an answer for them when they're like, how much is this dollar worth to this dollar? And then it's like, oh, this is what it is, right? I like the detail that you guys put into it. Allows an endless of possibilities for players, but it would be annoying as a DM to just be like, fuck, I built all this shit and you guys just ran past it.
I mean, the thing is, like, the more life you breathe into the world, the more living it is, right? So if the world's pretty monotone, your players aren't going to buy it. So you gotta breathe some sense of interaction and life in there, and then they eat it up, right?
Yeah, which actually I think the more you put into the world, the more invested your players get into that world, and the more likely they are to do the quests that you've put out for them, because they want to explore the world. And I think a lot of DMs skip that part. They'll go right to the quest line. They think, how do I build the quest line, rather than how do I build the world that the quest lines go in, right? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's important to start with the world first. There's no doubt about that. I mean, if you have that's not to say that if you don't have a really cool idea for a quest, and you just know that it's going to take place in a desert, you can't write the quest and then fill in the details later. Everyone's got a different process, but I think more importantly, I mean, what's the most important thing is having confidence in your world. And if you take it seriously and you act as though these things are real and you portray them in that sort of light, then your characters are going to see that kind of genuine attitude you have towards it, right? Yeah. You know, when they say, like, what do I see on the horizon? You're like, oh, I don't know, like maybe a tree or something. I don't know. Like, you gotta be like,
18 spiders.
No, here's what you see, and this is how you see it. And if you give them that, then they'll actually start to interact with it.
No, I agree. Yeah.
I tried to keep it pretty small to the story I was trying to tell with my players. So, for example, the city that they start in, I basically made. Yeah, they didn't spend a lot of time there, so I didn't have to memorize a lot of it.
Fuckers.
But
get back there.
There's guards that patrol the whole perimeter. There's no leaving.
So, like, I made up the town they started in, and this town's biggest thing that they had was this, like, light speed monorail that they took to different continents.
Oh, wow. Yours is more modern then, I guess?
Yeah, like, there's cars and nice stuff like that.
Okay, cool. Nice stuff like that.
No, I've seen some fucking really awesome homebrews and, like, classes and races and backgrounds and also equipment for homebrews that are modern, right? With, like, laser weapons and warlocks that are kind of like techno warlocks instead of, like a traditional warlock. It's super cool shit.
Yeah. I built that and basically planned out different continents that are around. They're immediately transported to another plane, basically.
Okay.
So this is where I spent the most time, and it's back to there's creatures and pretty typical D&D stuff. So I built the places where they wanted to go, where I wanted them to go. So
was that where they went?
Not at first. They were going off a lot.
Okay.
But I found it kind of hard to start, like, improvising different places they went.
Well, that's the whole thing with Tyson McKay, right? Linking this back to the Dicey D20 podcast, but like, he can go basically wherever he wants, and then I say I want to go randomly wherever I go, Noah, and Noah goes, "Fuck, he probably has to." I'm not sure if you improvise it or if you actually have, like, a list of.
No, so I have, I don't want to give away too much, but I do have a list of different planes of existence, and then I have you roll a dice. I think it's usually a D12. It should be.
Yeah, I figured, but you probably don't have them all fleshed out, right? And then you kind of have to make a lot of it up on the spot.
To be honest, I have your drop points usually fleshed out, but sometimes I have those randomized as well, and I ask for another roll, right? And then it kind of depends, but yeah, you can never do too much planning, and I say that with a word of caution, because I mean, you obviously can overplan, but more planning isn't bad. So long as you can access the information fast.
That was going to be one of my questions. I was going to ask, how many hours would you say you put aside before you start the campaign?
Oh fuck, I don't know. Like, it depends on how complex the storyline is. How many times am I mind fucking you is my question. Because if I'm mind fucking you
0.
once, maybe.
All the time.
Never.
If it's just once or if it's 0, I mean, it really just depends on how complex things are. I've sat down and probably done about 12 hours and felt confident in a campaign, and I've sat down and done like 2 weeks worth, probably like upwards of 24 hours of just sitting down, like actual writing time. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm not invested, or not that I'm not invested in it, but I don't know where it's going, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I need more.
Okay. So set aside the time, but don't feel rushed, I guess is what you're saying.
No. I mean, like, just find whatever inspiration you want from drugs and alcohol, and then go from there. Right?
What if kids watch this podcast, Noah?
Kids, if you're listening, if you find cocaine in your parents' bedrooms, snort as much of it as you can.
I think you said this on one of the episodes already.
That's my go-to line for drugs. But no, like, I mean, I don't know. If this is something that you want to take to your friends that you're super excited about, because man, I still get super excited about it. It's something that never gets old. And when I was first starting out, I was super excited about it. So I wanted to do a really good job. And I'm the kind of person that loves to read and like sit down and write. So I don't even need to plan to do it, though that does help with like a busy schedule, like lately. But I'll just like sit down and spend, whether I want to spend a half an hour doing something or whether I want to spend 4.5 hours and like actually plant myself somewhere and write away, then I'll write away, it depends on what your style is.
Yeah, no, a lot of it is improv because, like Shane was saying, like you plan for all the stuff and it's not, even though you're throwing your players breadcrumbs, they're not always going to bite onto those and follow to the next city where like the main quest is going. They might just fuck off way to the west and you're like, guys,
there is no west. It's just water. You're drowning right now.
It's a flat earth, you fuckers.
I go north. It's also water. You're on an island, guys.
So I remember I was running a storyline for like a group of 3, and these guys were like really into like pirates and being on the sea and stuff like that. So instead of planning a whole world, I just planned a couple like chains of islands, and I made them start off on like a pirate ship type thing. So these guys were like slavers in the bottom on the big rows, and that's where they started off. They were sitting beside each other, and that's how they started the quest. They just started interacting, and they're just like, oh, like, how'd you get on here? And they're like, I don't know. And then the big slaver would come in and be like, hey, shot it, and then whip them on the back, and they'd be like, holy fuck, okay, back to rowing. And then yeah, so like you could start a campaign anywhere.
So do you, when starting a world, would you say it's probably smarter to start them off in a situation where they, I don't want to say they don't have free will, but don't have as much choice to do whatever they want? Or do you...
No, this is a really good question, because it's actually one that comes up a lot in DM circles and people talking.
Well, a lot of people start people off in chains or like locked up in jail, right? Or whatever. And is that just because they haven't fleshed out the world, so they want to keep you as contained as possible until they flesh out that world? Or is that just a way to start it off?
No, I don't think that's it. I think the world can still be very fleshed out, and people still start off with the chain to the cell wall, or the, rowing, till you got blisters on your hands or whatever the case may be, whipped in the back, right? Like, the whole deal with the whole prisoner start off to D&D is that it creates and this is what I found, at least, because I've used it. I'm not proud of it, but I used it in the past. You
used it in the Dicey D20, actually.
Yeah.
Although you only use it on one of the 3 players, so...
Yeah, I'm a little bit better than most, I guess, but I don't know. The thing about the prisoner thing is that it creates camaraderie. So immediately there's a faction. There's us, the prisoners, and them, the people who are imprisoning us, and no one wants to be imprisoned. So they immediately see themselves as the good guys or the protagonists. And like breaking out becomes an ordeal, and that can be pretty fun because not a lot of people experience what it's like to break out of prison very often. So that's one thing. Second, I don't want to hate on it, but it is somewhat of a lazy start off because it absolves the DM of having to like actually create an organic interaction for players. It's speed dating. It's like you're thrust in a room, we're locking the door, you have a minute to talk and figure out whether or not this is going to work. That's all it is, right? Like it's the speed
My kind of Friday
D&D.
night.
Look, so that's my thoughts on it. I don't think that it's not viable. I think that you can definitely put cool spins on it, but I think that in DMing, as you DM more, you evolve, and I think I just evolved past that.
We got a little bit off the world building topic.
No, but this is good stuff. This is like how to start a campaign.
Yeah, it's they're all interlinked, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to divvy up just sections of D&D and be like, this is what we're learning today, nothing else.
Yeah. I want to pose a question to the other DMs if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that fine?
Have you got them written in the show notes?
No, I wasn't shown the show nuts.
Show nuts.
Sorry, that's what I heard.
I'll show you them right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. So this one goes out
God, put those away.
to Justin and Shane, because obviously the geography is important, and then you've got your cities and your people that inhabit them. But one of the biggest things for me, one of the things that I have the most fun deciding about the world that I'm going to run is what the theme of the campaign is. So like Shane's, for example, is like this futuristic, very high tech type of world, which is super cool. Ness's is like Pirates of the Caribbean, right? But you're within certain themes like sword and sorcery, right? Or like horror and gore, right? Or like mystery or intrigue, right? There are different themes that you can apply to your world that totally change the landscape. So I just want to ask these guys like what their favorite one is, or
I actually ran a holiday one for my buddy Luke and his girl.
Shout out to Luke.
Yeah, if you're listening. But it's cool. I did a holiday special type thing. So like your standard rescue Santa type thing from evil elves that have like betrayed.
What if I'm not Christian?
That's okay. You can play this anyway.
I don't think I can.
Roll your rebel dice and we're good to go.
It's a holiday campaign, not a Christmas campaign.
Excuse me, Justin. We don't want to get fucking shut down first episode. Okay?
Oh my God. It was a Hebrew campaign. Okay. I'm sorry. Anyway, on to the world description. So I kind of like made it like what you would hear from like a little kid's book. So like there was the candy cane forest and there was like rivers of chocolate and that like sort of like Hansel and Gretel theme. But instead of that being like just like the gingerbread house and the witch lures them in, it was the entire landscape. So everything was edible. But the thing with that was that like things go bad eventually and there was parts of that world that were like corrupted
and moldy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they were like disgusting. So like eventually, like when I first started the campaign, they were like eating everything, and I was like, okay, relax. Like you're gonna gain some weight, and it's gonna be harder to walk. Your speed's gonna reduce, like things like that. And they're like, oh shit, okay, I'm gonna lay off the chocolate. They're just like dunking their heads in the river and coming back up, and it's just like swashing out of their mouths. And I'm like, holy fuck, they're going wild.
Calm down.
So you kind of went with like a surrealism. You kind of went with like a completely off the books.
Yeah, just something that like,
as I introduced him, he's alleyway DM. He does whatever the fuck he wants, and you like it.
And the cool thing about that was that like the villains were also like edible type things. So like they would chop their chocolate leg off with a sword, and then he would be like, I maul at his neck, and then there'd be like a part of chocolate missing out of the guy's neck, and he's like screaming, and the rest of them like flee and just like stuff like that. But the thing was, the longer that they spent time in this world, the more that their body turned into like candy itself. Like it was like a mutated world. So the longer you spent in it, like the higher chance of you to become one of them type thing.
That's cool. I kind of like that. So kind of like a beautiful outside, a beautiful exterior that's hiding kind of like a dark thing. You know?
Just like Justin.
Just like Justin. And Baxter. Yep.
That's on the inside. So Shane, do you have a theme idea? I mean, if you feel like comfortable telling us, we might put it on the Dicey D20, you know?
I didn't have an overall theme for the one I'm running now, but originally it was going to be kind of a Western.
It's kind of cool.
So there'd be like steam powered trains and stuff like that. But a lot of the energy sources I wanted to be drawn from like magic and stuff like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it turned into kind of like a magical
So
Western.
like, what's that? Alien versus Cowboy?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like that.
Kind of like that movie.
Where you could get guys saying it's high noon and then everyone runs.
No, that's a different.
Overwatch joke.
That's a cool one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was figuring out different like aspects of how it would work, and like I wanted all magic to be cast from pistols and guns and stuff like that. I thought it'd be interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
But it evolved into the one I'm running now.
Yeah, that's a cool one. I'd say if you start up a new campaign with this group, I'd say go with that one again. That sounds like a really cool idea.
Yeah,
I'd like to play through that sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll ditch these goons and come play with you.
Yeah. Some other ones that I've played in, I found that some smaller quests kind of deviated from the theme a bit.
Okay.
So there was one I played in that turned into a bit more of like a kind of police investigation. We were trying to figure out
I was in that.
something that happened. I was playing with Josh at the time.
I heard your DM was shit.
Well, hopefully he never listens to this.
Not that anyone asked, but my favorite's horror, but that's okay. We can move on.
Yeah, no. You've talked about that. We played a horror campaign with you actually
Well,
once.
let him explain a little bit. We all got to, talk our bunions off here. I think it's Noah's turn to talk his bunion
No,
off.
it's fine. It's fine.
No.
Look, I'm really brief. I love horror. I hate horror movies, but I love playing horror in D&D because I find it's the only genre, the only theme to a campaign where players actually have to be realistic. When you're in fantasy,
You mean Gnombard the Gnome-Bard?
Yeah, Gnombard the Gnome-Bard. Yeah,
This is a side
that
thing.
dude was sick.
Noah ran us through
but
a horror quest, and I played Gnombard the Gnome-Bard. That was his name and his class. And
well, that was more of a horror session. That was more of like a one-off for Halloween, I think, that we did, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was still. I found most people were trying to play it seriously,
Yeah.
and then I was just fucking around. But I mean, it worked as a bard, I guess, right? Because bards
Sure.
are
Never serious.
not that they're never serious, but they're a little bit more of a
little lighthearted.
Yeah. Their whole bit is they're supposed to uplift the team, so that's kind of what I was doing. Whether I did that through realistic means or unrealistic means.
You were like the fat funny guy who was the second one to die.
Yeah. I went down a lot. Let's just say that.
Yeah, you did go down. No, but I just think that, I mean, with a horror campaign, because it's just the mechanics, right? Like, that's all it comes down to. And if you are good with thematics and you're good with context, then you can make the world as scary and as dark as you want. But because horror has such a mechanic of, like, there is actual death and you can actually die. Mm-hmm. And, if you encounter something that's frightening, you roll for fear and you roll for insanity, whether short-term or long-term, depending on the situation. You can just straight up, like, run away from your friends and leave. And it's like, if I was actually faced with a dude who was, like, hacking someone limb from limb, I'd like to think that I'd be a good guy and run in there and help. But in that moment, with all the blood spraying around, you see an artery, giving it right against the wall. What are you going to do, right? Like, so horror tends to be the only one that I find players actually have to, like, realistically think about their safety. I find in fantasy campaigns that I have, a lot of players will just throw themselves into danger. They'll pull their pants down and try and pee into a ritual bowl that a Yonti's trying to use for a sacrifice.
Who does that?
Yeah.
But if it was horror, you wouldn't fucking dare pull your pants down and whip your dick out. You would be like, shit, I gotta think about this because, like, I might actually die here.
I don't know if you know Justin at all.
So I kind of like the hardcore horror campaigns a lot.
No, that was a cool little tangent. So that's kind of, some themes to think about for potential DMs if they want to start their own. Mm-hmm. So bringing it back to world building. So one of the things you said to make the world more dynamic and alive is using weather techniques. You said, right?
Yeah.
Are there any other techniques that you guys use to bring the world alive, like characters, animals? Buildings, what kind of things do you guys use to bring the world alive?
No, that's a good question. NPCs, make them unique, right? Nothing can be more beneficial to a campaign than unique NPCs, and nothing can derail a campaign like NPCs.
Yeah.
Your players are like, ooh, that quest line over there? No, I want to talk to this dwarf. who runs this tavern. He seems like a dope. He's got one eye, It's that, But I mean, my players oftentimes form very personal relationships with shop owners or with NPCs because they've got a bit, right? Like I used to do this dwarf whose name was Backroth Wyvern Toe. And then,
wow.
when he'd meet someone, he'd be like, "Yeah, my name's Backroth Wyvern Toe on account of my large toe." And then like they just, and the guy's kind of like a grumpy old dwarf that doesn't really like anyone, but is very respected. So if you lay down like a personality and a couple of physical characteristics, and their players have personality traits, and then DMs oftentimes forget to give life to an NPC, and like, what do they care about? Do they have a family? Are they just scraping by with rent, or are they, pretty wealthy and kind of dickish to everyone?
Mm-hmm,
or are they just like a good Samaritan? Like, do they believe in the god of the city, or are they kind of not about that? Do they like the king, or do they not like the, right? Like, you can give them a lot of life, and the more life you give those, just like the world, the more life you give NPCs, the more realistic it is you don't feel like you're talking to a wall. You feel like you're talking to a person.
Yeah.
As a DM, there's no more fun than creating. There's no better time than creating an NPC, which is like absolutely you.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
They're all kind of you in a way. Like each one of them is somewhat your personality, just through a different lens. And I've been very lucky to play my real soulmate NPC for 3 sessions. He was awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Definitely like just dynamics that go along with your theme. So for that pirate one, just like in like Pirates of the Caribbean, there's Davy Jones's like ship. So in mine, I made like a were-tiger ship, and these guys were like the kings of the sea, and the captain was called El Tigre.
That's fucking sick.
Yeah, and like literally like, so this ship was not only like quadruple the size of any other ship on the sea, but also like the amount of cannons on there and just like their combat skills. Yeah, they just seem like a normal crew, but when you get on there, they all shift into tigers, and then you're like, holy fuck. And then they claw you to death. People like have heard tales of them, and they don't actually have like physical evidence of them. So they know what like the ship looks like, but they don't actually know the sigil or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It just like appears as they all shift. So just little cool dynamics like that, I guess.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of like myths and legends, right?
Like as you just said, like, so creating this legend or myth that's in the world that kind of intrigues the players to find like a Loch Ness monster or a Bigfoot. Everyone's looking for them, right? Mm-hmm. And so like to give them that, not main quest, but give them like a thing to look out for, or if they, well, so they're always on their toes.
It's also context, right? I mean, like every single society, town, village, country, nation, continent, they all have a culture, and cultures clashing is really cool, but you got to have a culture to have cultures clash, right? So when like Ness is talking about this piracy and El Tigre on the sea and stuff like that, it's very much so along the same lines as like a religion or like just a state of being. Like I've created cities of generally peaceful people who like are not, these were silver dragonborns, I think. And they were above war. They didn't want anything to do with it. They were kind of like monk-like and very much spiritual in that sense. If you give culture to the NPCs, it's like really cool for players to flip from culture to culture and really see how dynamic it is. Kind
of like a melting pot.
Yeah, I mean, you can have cities like, right now I'm running a campaign with this large city called Elion, which is just an amalgamation of all different kinds of people.
As 4 white dudes talk about melting pot.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a thing.
I'm just kidding. Oh, here's a good one. I'm going to start off with Shane for this one.
Wow.
Well, listen, you guys talk a lot.
Do you think Shane's talked enough?
Yeah, man, you gotta bring it down.
Never shuts up. My God, off the pod, like fuck.
Soon you're gonna be passing Sab's word count. Building this world in like these regions and these different NPCs. I kind of want to ask, like, where do you get the names from to craft like your characters and your areas and your towns? Do you just pull them out of a hat? Do you write like a bunch of different words on a piece of paper and then just slap them together? Or
Yeah, there's a lot of just saying a bunch of kind of weird words in my head, kind of see what they sound like. and then try to put that to something.
Okay.
Random generators have helped a lot. For characters, though, I've started to like try to put more emotions into them.
Okay.
So, for example, I have a family, and they're called the Angst family. So there's this really angsty teenager who's like super bratty and hates his parents.
Yeah.
So when they encounter them, it's just this huge ordeal based on angst and teenage angst, stuff like that.
So you'll name your characters almost after the, well, not directly, but like after the emotion or like.
Yeah, that I want them to kind of portray.
Okay.
Like I have another NPC that they picked up and is in their party now, who's based off bravery. So he's also a kid. He's like 7, but he's the bravest kid you'll ever meet. He's always running in head first and into battle and whatever. And he's become a bit of like a problem for them because they're always trying to keep track of him and make sure he doesn't die, basically.
Yeah. Justin, how do you go about like naming like an inn, say you had like a tavern or something? How would you?
Honestly, just kind of like think back of like, I don't know, just like watching movies, like stuff like Lord of the Rings, like depending on what your theme's on, you could just take stuff from there, but like switch it up a bit. So don't be like, oh, okay, this guy's name is Legolas, because like then they're like, okay, so he's a bowmaster, and then you're like, psych, no, he's actually just really good with daggers, or, like something like that.
Or he's like legless and he has no legs. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said you couldn't be a DM,
but he's still got a bow.
So just like, I don't know, you could even like, use half of his name and combine it with like just something random. So like you could be like, oh, this is Legson, the axe master, or the butcher of the town, or like, it's just, honestly, it's just from like the top of my head. So you don't need any like generators or anything like that. If you do, like, I'm not judging or anything like that. I'm just.
He does always.
Fuck you, buddy. Because I use generators.
Yeah. Honestly,
not above it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
There's tons of like I'm on the subreddit for Dungeons and Dragons and or D&D. I forget which one it is. Anyway, there's tons of posts of people being like, here's 1,000 unique NPC players, and you go through it and there's like, I can't even think of any right now, but there's just like, it has their name and then it has like a 2-paragraph backstory of just to start off with. And they've got like these unique traits and like that. So if you have problems, I think going into the subreddit is not a bad idea to find names and inspiration.
I mean, that's all it is really, right? Like when it comes to name generators, fantasy name generators is like my favorite. I think Emily something runs that site. It's awesome. It's not about like just plucking a name from there. It's about just starting to get the alliteration, starting to get like the flow of the words going, right? Mm-hmm. You know, if I want a badass, you know, if a guy is like a bad guy, I want kind of like a badass name for him. You know, I don't have to name him after his trait necessarily, but you know, like Mulgore is a pretty fucking badass name, right? You're not going to name your huge barbarian death knight, you know, Daisy. You know, you gotta kind of.
That'd be funny. That could be a bit though.
It could be a bit. I mean, as far as naming taverns, it's just about putting weird shit together. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the honest gecko, you know, or the prancing tiger. Or,
what was the one? You know, what was the one in the Dicey D20?
That was the Iron Pick.
Iron Pick. Yeah, which was a mining town, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, so name it after your. You know, it has to do with the geography again. It has to do with the culture. You know, is it an upscale bar? Is it a kind of a dive bar, right? Is it a fancy restaurant, or you know, are we just kind of like selling liquor to people who are underage, right? And the name can reflect that, right? Like I have one called like the Mangy Goat. That's like a really really downtrodden bar.
Do they have sex with goats there?
I've got other ones like the Perfect Pearl and other stuff like that. Like they're just, I don't know, they're just more up class, right?
So you kind of just use the name generator as a starting point, and then you take certain words from the words that they generate and put it into something that could be.
Yeah, or if I was like, you know, if I'm making the name of a tavern and then, you know, all of a sudden I see the word like, I don't know, crocodile. And I was like, I didn't think of crocodile. I could call it the Salty Crocodile, right? And then, you know,
the Salty Croc.
Yeah, the salty crock. Or the salty crock pot, and then call it the crock pot. You know,
Oh my God.
You kind of get that word train going, right?
Yeah. That's kind of
Because
cool.
sometimes it's hard to just come off the top and be like, okay, I've made this whole town, but now I have to make a tavern. What do I call it?
The tavern.
Yes, this is the place people go to drink. Yeah, but what's it called? There's a lot of people inside. They seem to be having a good time. Yeah, but like, what's the sign say? The sign's made of wood. It's very, very nice. A very nice sign, actually. It looks like it's painted. As you walk underneath the sign, no, I want to read it. And it's like, no, but it's just the wind's blowing. The sign, you can't see it. It's like,
Roll me a d20.
and be proud of the names that
You roll me a d20, nat 20. It's foggy. I don't know.
There is no sign.
Like, how
You know what? I lied.
How serious is the world, right? And
Yeah.
if it's not a very serious world, the names can be silly, and if it's pretty serious, it can be pretty serious.
Well, it
Or it
can
can
also
be like the bar from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where it's like the bar has no sign, so good luck finding it.
okay.
You could even make it like super direct. Like the bar could be called like Three Hags and a Goat, and then the thing could be run by like three like sister hags,
And the goat's in charge.
Yeah, and the goat. Sure. Yeah,
The
exactly.
original manager who they turned into a goat is in charge of the place.
Yeah,
Wow.
just like little things like that.
Watch out, guys. I'm going to be creating my own podcast. No, I think this has been super interesting. I really like hearing about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, hopefully, it's a good resource, or at least something that's interesting to listen to, either for upcoming DMs or even players who are just a little bit more interested in the behind the scenes. Because, you know, if you do it right, it can all seem so real, and you know, if it's real to you, it's real to them. So, hopefully, this has been really cool for people who are listening and either wanting to get into it or just wanting to know more.
So I'm gonna open up to the table. If anyone has any further knowledge that they want to dump about world building, anything I didn't touch, because I've never been through the process, so I don't know quite what questions to ask. So if I missed anything,
Okay, like right off the top of my head, so in that like ship campaign that I was running, like these guys were slavers, and then eventually like their freedom came from the weather. And people were like, oh, like, what do you mean like that? These 20-foot waves actually like knocked over the ship, and like there's a
and
massive
drowned them
storm.
and freed them from their lives.
And there was like a whirlpool going on as well. So I'm like describing all that stuff. And then these guys are just trying to escape and like swim to land. And they had to roll like strength checks not to get like pulled into the whirlpool. So just like adding those massive weather storms that can be like anywhere in the biomes. So like if you're in a sand biome, make a tornado. Like just like a sand twister type thing.
Quicksand or something.
Yeah.
That's a good point, though, is to, like, you can manipulate your world to have an effect that maybe, or to increase the likeliness of an effect that you want, right? If you want them to escape from the ship, but they're having a hard time, or maybe they're just not going about it the right way, give them a little nudge, right?
Now, do you guys, for weather, do you already have it planned out in advance, or do you roll for the randomness of the weather? Because, I mean, the weather isn't planned, right? So do you roll, say, like, oh, is it going to be a sunny day? Is it going to be rainy? Like, how do you guys play weather?
I definitely use pathetic fallacy a lot, but to be fair, who doesn't?
What's that?
Well, pathetic fallacy is just when the atmosphere matches the mood. So,
Okay.
you know, if they're pretty down because, you know, the mayor just got kidnapped and they're off to find him, you know, and his wife was brutally killed. Let's say it's a horror campaign, because that's awesome. Then it's going to be pretty gloomy and dark outside. But if they're off to, like, go get a bunch of money from a quest that they just succeeded on, the weather's probably going to be a little bit nicer. Right? I don't know. It's also random, and it also just depends on how I feel that day. So,
But if he's in a shitty mood, prepare for the tornado.
yeah, exactly.
Better hold on to something. Oh, God.
We haven't even started yet. Get ready. Okay, so you kind of mimic the mood of the story. It's an interesting way to play it. Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel about the weather?
I have also used that trick as well, but like Noah said, it's random. It just kind of like depends on what's happening. You don't really put that much thought into it. You're just like, okay, like they're running away from a villain, and then they get outside and it's storming lightning with heavy rain. Like it just adds to the atmosphere. Like, yeah. So if they're trying to run away from this giant imp or something like that, it'll like add an effect of like, oh, okay, I roll a perception check to see where I'm going, but the heavy rain could be something that obscures like their sight as well.
Yeah, I usually plan out my weather situations depending on what they're doing. For example, I'm planning a ship battle for them. It's going to be middle of a storm, so there might be like, maybe there'll be a whirlpool going on.
Whirlpool.
So it's something they have to navigate around mid-combat, and I'm going to have it downpouring, so visibility would become a problem that they would have to figure out. So it can add to different game mechanics and experiences.
Yeah, friendly fire.
Yeah.
You know what? They might not think it's like the enemy or their friends, but just like, and then they chop open the captain's stomach, and then everyone's like, all right, get him. And then the plot changes all over again. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow. I did not know weather went into this game that much.
I don't want to talk about the weather anymore.
Okay. Just to wrap it up, I think it's super cool that you guys use the weather that way, like just to kind of as your
talking about it. Stop talking about it. It's just the fucking weather. Episode 2, we're going to be talking about the seasons of the year. And then after that...
Do you guys play with seasons?
Yeah, of course I play with seasons.
Okay.
There's got to be seasons.
Yeah. I just didn't know. Like,
we're assuming that whatever material plane they're on traverses through space and, around the sun, I guess.
What if it doesn't? What if there's no sun?
Well, then they're in their Underdark and they have bigger problems.
They're in the Nine Hells and there's demons chasing them.
I don't know. I guess before you asked about passing on some wisdom. So like, I just like to leave it off with just like, if you think that some shit's really cool, then fucking make it and it will be cool. And that's how I gauge all my campaigns for whether or not they're going to be successful. Is like, as a player, would I like to play through this? Does this seem like some dope shit to me? And if it does seem cool, then I'm fucking doing what I'm supposed to do. And if it seems lacking, then it's lacking. But I mean, if you have a vision and you think it's going to be really cool, just create it, man. And if you buy into it, if you love it and you breathe life into it, then other people will too.
Okay. So yours is more of a do it you think would be fun and then stick with that. Self-confidence, basically. You
I'm a confident person.
We know that. All right. Any words of wisdom from you, Justin?
Yeah, for me, like making your first map's pretty tough. So maybe if you just like start off your first like DM session with like an outlined one. So like one of my first sessions, I went back and actually Googled the Fable 1 like map. And like, that's perfect because it has ocean. It has all these like different regions that already have like sigils that are made throughout the game. So if you know a video game or like a book really well, just use a map out of that. And then like you can change the towns around if it's like a pretty big book. So like if you want to use like the Lord of the Rings map, you could just like switch up the names of the regions and things like that. Just like some simple stuff like that, but it'll help you a long way. And that way you don't have to create, you're not like, oh, like how many continents should I have in this thing and all that stuff. Like it could already all planned out for you. And then that way you can focus on making really cool NPCs and making all these little towns and cities that go along with the pre-made world. So that's just like, if you're struggling and if you're not like the most creative person, then like maybe that's a step that you can take as well.
Yeah. And there's no judging because honestly, unless you tell your players, they won't know, right?
No, they'll have no idea.
Yeah, because
players don't notice anything that's going on.
All the things Noah is telling me right now. Fuck, I had no idea, and I've been playing underneath him for 3 years. Literally, he stands on me, and we play that way.
That's so weird.
All right, Shane, any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to Noah's, I guess.
Believe in yourself.
Yeah, as long as you enjoy what you're creating, I guess, and might even just play with your friends or something like that. And if they like similar things to you, chances are they're going to like it as well.
Amen.
Yeah. Already liking you better than Sab, that guy. All right, guys.
Cry.
Yeah, he's already crying in the other room over there. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me for the first Nat 20 Knowledge world building series. I hope we touched on it enough, and I know we went off a few tangents there, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
That's D&D. It's Honestly, if you can't deal with tangents, then maybe you probably shouldn't be a DM. Stick with being a player and take people on tangents. Yeah, so I think we're going to kind of keep with this format. We're going to branch it off into another podcast area, but it'll mostly be the same crew. We've thought about maybe bringing on potential creators from other podcasts, other DMs, to get different perspectives and different ideas, because even with the three of you, you all have fairly differing strategies and how to plan and stuff like that. So
Yeah, for sure.
if you guys enjoyed the podcast, leave us a like. We don't have a Twitter for this one yet, so just follow Dicey D20, like them on Facebook.
Shoot us messages about what you guys want to hear about, whether it's quest building or NPC creation, helping characters create their player characters, helping your storylines along, anything like that. Mechanics is another big thing that people have questions about. We can always delve into topics like that, so definitely let us know what you guys are interested in hearing about.
Well, even mechanics, we could go into like player mechanics too. We could break that down into episodes. Like dexterity, strength, and then like all tons of mechanics. This will be the mechanics podcast for Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, we'll if you have any pressing issues, you're a DM currently and you're stuck in a not sure where to go, for sure tweet out at us, and hopefully we can help you there, and then maybe we'll bring it into the podcast.
For sure.
Yeah, any problems you've encountered would be interesting to hear how different DMs might deal with it.
For sure, yeah. And if you want to go into more detail, maybe we'll post an email that you guys can just email us, like more detailed questions, more detailed scenarios, right? And we can dive into them. Maybe that could be our closeout segment kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be really awesome to hear people's funniest stories, people's weirdest stories, people's worst times DMing, whether it was ruined by a character, ruined by, lack of planning, or they couldn't improvise, or they didn't know what to do.
Even players' perspectives, like having a bad DM, having a good DM, what players like from a DM. If you guys want to send us that'd be awesome as well.
Cool.
So as for now, follow us on Twitter, DiceyD20, Facebook, DiceyD20. If you want, you can support us on Patreon. This has been Josh. I've been your host.
Yeah,
we'll see you.
DM of the Dicey D20.
Yeah, we know that.
No, sorry, I just need to say it a lot.
He strokes his ego a lot.
That's where the confidence comes from.
Yeah, and we got the back alley DM, Justin.
Yeah, Justin, also known as Fievel or Baxter.
Or Buzz.
Or Buzz, yeah. Whatever you guys want.
And Shane.
The fresh DM.
The fresh DM. The new Sab.
Oh.
I like that.
Our bit was going to be just pretending it was Sab with a different voice.
Maybe instead of bringing in new DMs every week, we could just change our voices up. Hi, I'm Greg. And then just...
maybe on the voice acting podcast, we can, like when we talk about voice acting and how to play characters, that'll be our bit. Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah,
true.
All right, guys. Hope you have a good week. Thank you for listening.
Peace out.
Thanks.
See ya.